Okay, students, so today we're going to answer question 4 for the Heroine of Lime Rock. So you should already have this out on your desk, ready to go. And let's turn to question 4. Now, question 4 says, was Ida Lewis's decision to rescue the 2 soldiers a good decision? Provide 2 details from this selection to support your answer. Now, when we looked at these questions before reading, we had talked about how you have to show how these 2 details show whether or not she made a good decision. So we have to do that evaluation when we're rereading through our text. And so let's look at our second question, because this is very similar to the first writing response that we did. Because the first one said, explain how the selection shows Ida's courage. Include 2 details from the selection in your answer. Now, before you answer this question, there's a couple things you need to be aware of. First of all, make sure you go back to your text. Always go back to the text. Look for your 2 details from the selection to decide whether or not she made a good decision. Read through your annotations, the things that you've underlined. Okay, if you annotated this the first time you read it, you should have already done some of the work for you. Okay? Now, the other thing I want to remind you of is make sure that you're answering using the race format. So, remember, for the race format, you have your R, your A, your C, and your E. But, because you need 2 details from the selection, that's 2 citations from the text, then you're going to have a race with an extra long C sound, right? So let's look at how Mrs. Cabral and I raced these one more time, and then we'll let you start writing. So first, we have our R and our A. So remember, R is when we restate, and A is when we answer. So I restated here in the Heroine of Lime Rock, Ida Lewis is very courageous. Okay, that's my R and my A. Mrs. Cabral had the selection shows Ida's courage because it talks about how she fought raging waters, saved the lives of people she didn't know. It's Mrs. Cabral's A. Oh, and this is the rest of my A. So that's where I'm answering the question. Okay, now that's our R and our A. Our R. So one of the most important things you need to do in the selection, remember in the question, it asks for 2 details from the selection. That's our C. Okay? Those are our citations. Now, when Mrs. Cabral and I answered the question, we had, so when I did it, I have my most obvious example is in paragraph 20 when she rushed into the freezing cold rain to save 2 soldiers. Okay, so I've cited where you can find it, all right, and I paraphrased. I put it into my own words. Remember, paraphrase means put into your own words, okay? I also cited an example down here. Another example is in paragraph 15 when she saved both farmers and their sheep from drowning. Okay, I identified where to find it in the text. I cited where to find it. And again, I paraphrased those 2 examples. With Mrs. Cabral's, she decided to use direct quotes. So she said, the first detail that proves this is in paragraph 10, which states, without thinking of danger, Ida was in her boat, skimming across the water to the rescue. Paragraph 10, she cited where it is, and there's her specific quote. Okay, the second detail is immediately after. Second detail in paragraph 15, which states in only a few minutes, Ida was taking the drowning men into her boat. After she had deposited them on shore, she went back and saved the sheep. Okay, so she has her quotation marks and where she cited it. All right. Now, did you guys notice when we cited our examples, we made it very clear they were examples by saying the most obvious example is when. Okay, another example makes it very clear where our citations are, where our examples, our details are. Mrs. Cabral said the first detail. And then here, she said the second detail. Okay, these are very important. They make it easy for the person who's grading your assessment to make sure that you use 2 details. All right? Finally, you need your E. You need to explain. So, in my example, I explained how this citation, how this detail, how this example answered the question by saying, since the weather was so bad, she could have drowned trying to save the men, but she didn't let this stop her. My second E, explanation, says, this shows Ida's courage because she risked her life for the sheep as well as for the farmers. Mrs. Cabral, remember, she put her E, she did one E sentence for both of her examples. That's okay too. So both of these quotes show that Ida has courage because she didn't let the dangerous element, such as the weather, stop her from helping others. There's Mrs. Cabral's E. I have two E's, okay? And then we can't forget our C's. All right, so make sure when you're answering this question, you're using your race format. You restate and answer the question, you cite a specific example, you explain how that example answers the question, you cite another example and explain how that answers the question, or you can cite your two examples back to back and then have one sentence explaining it in the end. You have to follow this format. So now, take the time, answer the question on your own. Now that you've written your response to question 4, you need to trade papers with your elbow partner. You're going to read your elbow partner's response, and then you're going to do these 3 things. So remember, you need to identify and label your R and your A sentence. You need to identify and label each C sentence. And you need to identify and label each E sentence. Okay? Do it so that it looks like my examples with my response and Mrs. Cabral's response. So you're going to write your R and your A, your C and your E, wherever you find those. It should look like one of these 2 things. By the time you're done labeling each sentence, the paper should look similar to these paragraphs, as I said, if your elbow partner's response is missing any parts of the race format. This is very important. If your elbow partner's response is missing any parts of the race format, write a few sentences under their response explaining what they're missing and how to fix it. Okay, make sure you guys do this. Help your elbow partners. You are experts too at this point. You've done this many times, so give them help. Okay, students, so now that you've gone through and identified and labeled your partner's responses, you should have traded papers. If you have to revise, make revisions to your response, please do that now. And that's all we have for today.